Hello, this is Derek Anderson with Amazon Lumberyard. In this tutorial, we will be covering working with lighting components to begin lighting our scene. To do this, we will set up an environmental probe, use the time of day editor, and set up lights using light components. Alright, let's make pretty happen. If you have been following along with the Getting Started series, go ahead and open your My First Level file. If you have not been following along, click Open Level, navigate to the Getting Started files, and open the Start Section 04 Lighting Level. Once your file opens, we are ready to begin. In order to light our scene properly, we must first set up an environmental probe. An environmental probe is a volume that defines the area in which we want to render lights. To add an environmental probe to your scene, right-click in the Perspective viewport and select Create New Component Entity. At this point, you may need to open the Entity Inspector and the Entity Outliner from the Tools menu. Once you have those windows open, go ahead and select your newly created entity in the Entity Outliner, and then click on the Add Component button in the Entity Inspector. In the Components list, go ahead and select Rendering, Lights, Environmental Probe to assign an environmental probe component to our entity. With our new component assigned, we are ready to define the volume of the environmental probe. Set the X, Y, and Z dimensions to 1024, 1024, 250 to set the render volume. If you cannot see the render volume, activate the Helpers icon in the upper right-hand corner, and you will see a yellow box outlining the area of the environmental probe. Next, return to the Entity Inspector, scroll down to Cube Map Generation, and click the Generate button to generate cube maps for your scene. This will take a moment, but you will see a noticeable lightening of the shadows once the cube maps are generated. With that done, we are ready to begin adding lights to our scene, but it's currently set to daytime, which is going to make it pretty hard to notice the lights. Let's open the Time of Day editor by selecting Tools, Other, Time of Day Editor, or by selecting the icon in the editor toolbar. The Time of Day editor gives us a lot of options for rendering lights and environmental effects. It contains parameters for HDR settings, volumetric fogs, night sky, skylights, sun, fog, things like that. For this tutorial, we're pretty much going to be sticking with the basics. More advanced applications of the Time of Day editor will be coming in another tutorial. For now, go ahead and click Import from File in the Tasks area of the Time of Day editor. And we're going to follow the path Samples Project, Levels, Getting Started Files, and we're going to open the Time of Day XML. In the background, we can see a sudden change in our environmental effects from the presets within that file. Inside the Time of Day editor, we have a slider at the bottom that lets us change the time of day on the fly. This is a really cool feature that lets us preview our level at any time of day whenever we want. For now, let's go ahead and set the time of day using the current time field, and let's set that to 11 p.m. so we have a scene firmly rooted in nighttime. And then go ahead and close the Time of Day editor. We are now ready to start placing lights. All right, to begin adding lights to our scene, go ahead and create a new component entity and select the entity in the Entity Outliner and add a new component. Go to Rendering, Lights, Projector Light to add a projector light component to your newly created entity. And you can see that adds a manipulatable object to our scene, and it has this nice little projector cage here that shows us the field that the light will be illuminating. Let's go ahead and move that under one of these street lights here. If you're having any trouble with positioning, you can always play with your grid snap settings. There we go. But that light is now pointed in the wrong direction. Let's go ahead and rotate that around so that it points down to the street set below. There we are. And next, let's go ahead and start modifying some of the parameters of that light so we can start getting it to look the way we want. First, let's go to the projector light parameters and scroll down until we see the texture field. Click on the File Explorer button, the little three dots right there. And let's go ahead and navigate to our Textures folder, Textures, Lights, Generic, and let's select Spot75.dds and select Open. Now we have a texture assigned to the light. Let's go ahead and adjust some of the parameters so that it'll actually shine down onto the road below. So let's go ahead and get started with our light color. Open the color picker here and let's set the red value to 250, the green value to 250, and the blue value to 150. Next, let's go ahead to our diffuse multiplier and set that to 25. Our max distance, let's go ahead and set that to 20. The attenuation bulb size to 6. And the field of view to 70. And now you can see we have this nice little street light shining down from our entity right here, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and duplicate that light and move one underneath the street light directly opposite that. And then we're going to select both of those entities and duplicate those so that we have a pair under each set of street lamps. So when you're done, you should have something that looks like this. Now that we have our street lights casting some light down onto the road, let's see if we can round out the visual appeal here. You see we got these bright areas underneath the street lights, but these big dark areas in between. So let's go ahead and use an area light to lighten up that area so that it looks a little bit more natural. To do this, we are going to right-click and create a new component entity, and then select the entity in the Entity Outliner and add a component in the Entity Inspector. So let's navigate down to Rendering Lights, Area Light. And let's start off with the color. We'll open up the color picker here. And let's set that to 250, 250, 150. Go ahead and close that out. And then let's set the diffuse multiplier to 20. And the max distance to 20. And let's select that entity, pull that up. Now you notice, just like the projector light, it is pointed sideways. We get this weird cast here on the street set. So let's go ahead and rotate that light and pull it up a little bit so that it's casting the way that we want it to. There we go. Play with the positioning a bit so we start to get some fade out. And let's position that right about there. Yeah, that looks better. All right, now let's go ahead and duplicate one all the way down the line. When you're done, you should have something that looks like this. So, what's next? Next up, let's place a player controller and camera so we can start moving around our scene in game mode. Subsequent tutorials will cover white box design with the designer tool. Thanks for watching, and please let us know what you think.